How's it going? My name is Gabe. Welcome to the first video of my channel. We're going to be diving into Photoshop today and looking at how you create your very first document in Adobe Photoshop. I'm really excited. Photoshop is something that I use all the time. It's a really great tool to create really amazing designs, and it's so versatile. We could go through videos literally for years and never cover everything. But getting started by creating your first document is a really great place to begin. All right, and so as you see in Photoshop, you open up to either a home menu or the learn menu. You can kind of change your defaults over here. And the way to create a new document, I'm big on shortcuts, so I'm always teach you the shortcuts that you need to know. You can go over here to click create new, or you can also do file new. But if you look up here, it'll show your shortcut is command N. So just gonna click command N. So right here, you've got a few different options. It'll show you recent sizes that you maybe used. If you've been using a certain dimension or setting previously, it'll bring those up here. You can also save custom settings. I don't really have any right now. And there are also some default sizes as far as things that are photographs for printing, illustration, web, mobile, film, and video. So lots of things there. We're not going to worry with any of the presets. We're going to go ahead and make our own. So over here, we have a few options. The first we can do is title our document. You don't have to do that before you start. I usually don't, but it's up to you. If you prefer to, you can. So we'll call this test document. And then you're going to specify the width and the height of the document. So it's important to know you're not locking yourself in here. You can't go back and change. You can go back and change this later, so you're not stuck. But typically, it's a good idea for you to know where to begin. There's some more reasons I could explain as to why that's extra important in Photoshop. But just safe to be said, try to get close to whatever you're actually going to be using for your final thing. So if you're printing something and you know it's going to be like this, 5 inches wide by 7 inches tall, then that's where you're going to want to start. So there are two things that are really important to note. Your inches and your pixels and your dimensions, like all that stuff you can change pretty easily. But really important things is your resolution and then your color mode. So your resolution, there are a few numbers that you just need to learn. So this pixels per inch is literally saying how many pixels exist within 1 inch in your document. And so if it's 300 pixels per inch, there's going to be more pixels in my document than if it were 72, which is another standard that we use. So the way you know is 72 is almost always used for screens. And so your screen is not going to have as many pixels per inch as needed to print something out, because printers are going to get a lot more detailed. And so if I'm going to do something for web or for digital that's not going to leave a screen, it's never going to be printed, I can stick this to 72 pixels per inch. And then my color mode, this is really important as well. So your computer will run on RGB, which I'll explain a little bit later, but that's red, green, and blue. And basically your pixels are mixing between these colors to create all the colors that you see on your screen. And so if you're going to be doing something digital, you're going to want to use RGB because that's the digital color space. So we'll click RGB for now. And if we're working digitally, most likely we'd probably want to be in pixels. You could do inches. There can be reasons for that. And then my default I usually start with is about 1600 by 1600. Over here, we have this option for artboards or the orientation. We're not going to worry with that now. Artboards are great, but can get a little complicated when it comes to saving your file. So we'll kind of leave that as is. And I'm going to create this document, and then I'm going to come back and create a second document with our print settings. So I'll go ahead and start this one, create. And here's our document. If you look at my rulers up here, you can see we have 1600 by 1600 pixels. So it's exactly as I specified. I'm not going to go into the workspace yet. I'm going to do another document. So command N, and see it saved all the recent settings of the thing that I used last. Another neat feature about Photoshop is if you've copied a photo and then you go to create a new doc in Photoshop, it'll automatically have it set to the size of the photo that you've copied. So if you want to use a photo that you found on the internet and do something with it, if you copy it and then go to Photoshop to open, it'll open in the same size. There are pros and cons to that. But say we're going to do this for something that's printed instead. So now we're not worried about pixels. We need something to be inches because I need to know exactly how big it'll be whenever I print it. A standard size in America is 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. That's a standard letter size piece of paper. And so because we are not using it for a screen, we're going to want to make sure we're on our CMYK. So CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And so those are the colors that are mixed together in a printer whenever you're printing something to get you the colors that you want. And so the reason that you want to be clear on which one you're using, if it's RGB or CMYK, this is just one example, but if you're going to print a flyer and you're developing a flyer in Photoshop and you have all these really cool popping blues and greens, whenever you actually print it, those colors are going to be way off from what you actually did in Photoshop. And the reason is because a printer doesn't use blues and greens to print. It uses that cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's like when you buy printer cartridges, you buy those colors. And so you don't want to be using the wrong color space, or you'll design something, think you know how it's going to look, and then whenever you go to print it, it does not look at all like you like. And the same way it goes for the opposite, is if you're doing something for digital and you have it set to your CMYK, you are not going to get these popping, vibrant colors that you could get on a digital screen. So that's the reason for using your different color modes. It's really important. You can change it later in the document. I've heard people say that it can mess with your colors. So the best way is really just to start from the beginning. All right, here I'm going to change this to 300 pixels per inch, because that's what we said is what you're going to need to use whenever you're printing something. There may be cases if you're doing a very large, something like a banner, that you could do 150. But in general, you're either going to do that 72 or that 300. There are extenuating circumstances, but for most people, that'll work. And then we'll call this test document print. All right, and so now you can see it's still showing me pixels in my grid and my ruler, which that's a setting you can change elsewhere. But we have our test document and then test document print. So if you look right here, I'm seeing CMYK, and then over here I'm seeing RGB. So if you've created a document and you're not sure which one it is, that's a good way to check and make sure that you're doing something and designing in the proper color space. Because if you're not, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and you're really going to regret it. So that's kind of it to creating your first Photoshop document. Like I said, there's a lot of different options, a lot of different stuff you can do. You can save different formats. You can use things that are predetermined, presets and stuff. But really, that's how you create a document. And I'm not going to go into just yet how you would change those sizes, change your color space, or change your dots per inch, but I'll get to that in the next video.